I'm Andy Teach, host of Andy's Awesome Adventures, and welcome to historic Philadelphia. I haven't been to historic Philadelphia since I was a kid, but this time I brought my youngest niece. At the end of the video, I'll tell you what she thought about our day together, but first let's take a look at the top 15 things to see in historic Philadelphia. The Independence Visitor Center is the starting point for your visit. It's the official welcome center of Independence National Historical Park. It has on-site ticketing to over 60 area attractions, including Independence Hall. It offers tours, maps, brochures, daily event listings, free historical films, and you can ask National Park Service Rangers and the concierge staff any questions you may have. We are at Independence Hall in Philadelphia. This is where the Declaration of Independence was signed.
Behind you, maybe you could switch thoughts with that. The first battle of the American Revolution happened in 1775. A few weeks later, the Second Continental Congress is meeting here, and they appoint George Washington to be the commander-in-chief. That happened in this room. They declared independence in this room. They start working out their government in this space. So this is the birthplace of the United States. The war finally ends in 1783. 1786, things are becoming so unstable that when Shays' Rebellion occurs in Massachusetts, they decide to convene a group of people to advise Congress. Congress itself authorized a big meeting called the Federal Convention. And the job of the convention is to fix the Articles of Confederation. So that they sat in this room 6 days a week, no air conditioning. They do not want to waste their time. They take a hard look at the Articles of Confederation, they say, forget it, we're throwing it out. They're not going to even bother trying to fix the Articles. They write a brand new government, and that product is called the Constitution. That happened in this room. So while this is going on, George Washington is sitting on the chair of the platform. Benjamin Franklin, at the age of 81, he's in pretty poor shape, so he actually pays people to carry him into this building. And he'll sit in the back here. And he says, well, I listened to the argument that's going on here. What's the big argument? The biggest argument. Small states, large states. Small states want equal status. Large states want representation by population. After 60 different arguments and voting periods, they come up with the divided Congress, right? You have equal status in the Senate. You have representation by population in the House. Franklin had been begging them to compromise because he figured if we don't have a union, we're not going to survive. We're a little brand new nation. We have all this valuable stuff that Europe wants. We're not going to survive. So we need to come together. So he believes the future of the United States is good, right? That we have a stable government, it's flexible, we can possibly change it if we really care to. Now, changing the Constitution is an extremely difficult thing. We had 27 amendments, 10 of them came right away. The Bill of Rights. Why? Abraham Lincoln visited this building on his way to his inauguration in 1861. And he said that everything he did politically could be traced back to the Declaration of Independence. When he was assassinated, his coffin lay in state, right here. Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton worked together for decades trying to get women the right to vote. Susan B. Anthony read the Declaration of the Rights of Women on the steps of Independence Hall on July 4th, 1876. These ladies never passed a legal vote on that federal level. The constitutional amendment does not happen until 1920. How long they would have had to have waited. Martin Luther King visited this building in 1959. In his famous speech, he says the Declaration of Independence is a promissory note that has become a bad check. I mentioned that Nelson Mandela received the Liberty Medal on the steps of Independence Hall in 1993. And the gentleman right up front was from South Africa. He called me over and he pulled out a coin. It was commemorative, and it had the face of Mandela right on it. And he said, "The winds of freedom blew all the way from your country to mine. That's why I'm here today." I don't know what brings you to this place. I don't know what connections you have made, will make, are making. I just know it's a great privilege for me to share it with you. I hope you have enjoyed it and the rest of your time here in Philadelphia. Thank you for coming. When they designed the building, they understood that this is 3 branches of government. This is an English courtroom where they practice English common law. Where do you have rights? People who lived in the colonies, they were proud to be British. They were proud of the rights that they had. They knew that there are no secret trials, and so the architect makes sure that there are no doors to keep you out of this courtroom. You have open arches. You are standing where the public can stand and watch justice being served. The jury of your peers, not some people shipped in from some other place. Your peers are sitting around you, and if you're accused, you stand in the prisoner's dock. You stand trial. So let's say it's 1774, and I'm accused of smuggling to avoid paying what? Taxes. Good, taxes. So, the argument is there should not be taxation without representation in Parliament. You don't know how what you're doing is affecting the economy here. Let's just say that I'm accused, they caught me red-handed, I confessed, they have eyewitnesses. Would any of you who just raised your hand please explain how you could find me not guilty after I've been caught red-handed and I've confessed?
I believe the law is fair.
Nice, there we go. He's thinking like they thought. They were not ruling on the actions of the accused, they were ruling on the law itself. They said the law was unjust, and therefore they don't care guilt, innocence, it's the law that's going to get tossed aside. It's called nullification by jury. The British hated that the Americans were doing this. So they decided to intervene. They had never really done that before. They were coming over here and saying, you know what, we're going to take this guy back to London, where people are paying taxes on everything. Or we're going to stick you in an admiralty court, where the judges are appointed by the crown, and you have no jury whatsoever. Now, folks, I just covered 3 of the complaints on the Declaration of Independence. There are 27 of them.
Yeah, they build them because they know it's no cost to you. I'm telling you, I went into the sand backyard and I knew they were going. And now you know after 8 years. You don't have to be telling me.
Congress Hall is located next to Independence Hall, and it's where the House of Representatives and Senate met when Philadelphia was the temporary capital of the U.S. Several members of Congress who served there would later become President of the United States: James Madison, James Monroe, Andrew Jackson, and William Henry Harrison. John Adams presided over the Senate as the country's first vice president. During this time, 3 new states, Vermont, Kentucky, and Tennessee, were admitted into the Union. Congress created the U.S. Mint and the national currency system, debated treaties, and established the Department of the Navy and the First Bank of the U.S. John Adams was inaugurated as the nation's second president here. After the federal government relocated to Washington, D.C., the building once again became the Philadelphia County Courthouse. Old City Hall, located next to Independence Hall, was the home of the U.S. Supreme Court from 1791 to 1800. It also served as headquarters in the battle against the yellow fever epidemic of 1793 and as an immigration center in the late 1700s. In 1751, the Pennsylvania Assembly ordered a 2,000-pound bell from London to hang in the new bell tower of the State House, now called Independence Hall. It remained there until 1976. The Liberty Bell was commissioned from the London firm of Lester & Pack, today the Whitechapel Bell Foundry, and was cast with the lettering, quote, "Proclaim liberty throughout all the land until all the inhabitants thereof," end quote, a biblical reference from the book of Leviticus. The bell first cracked when rung upon its arrival in Philadelphia and was twice recast by local workmen John Pass and John Stowe, whose last names appear on the bell. In the 1830s, the bell was adopted as a symbol by abolitionist societies who were attempting to outlaw slavery, who dubbed it the Liberty Bell. The bell acquired its distinctive large crack somewhere in the early 19th century. A widespread story claims it cracked while ringing after the death of Chief Justice John Marshall in 1835. In 1846, when the city decided to repair the bell prior to George Washington's birthday holiday, metalworkers widened the thin crack to prevent its further spread and restored the tone of the bell using a technique called stop drilling. The wide crack in the Liberty Bell is actually the repair job. There are over 40 drill bit marks in that wide crack, but the repair was not successful. The Public Ledger newspaper reported that the repair failed when another fissure developed while being rung for George Washington's birthday, and at that point the bell cracked beyond repair. The second crack, running from the abbreviation for Philadelphia up through the word Liberty, silenced the bell forever. The bell became famous after an 1847 short story claimed that a bell ringer rang it on July 4, 1776, upon hearing of the Second Continental Congress's vote for independence. Despite the fact that the bell did not ring for independence on that July 4th, the tale was widely accepted as fact, even by some historians. In the late 1800s, the Liberty Bell toured the country attempting to heal the wounds inflicted by the Civil War. In 1915, it returned to Philadelphia, where it remains today as a symbol of freedom. On June 11, 1776, Thomas Jefferson and 4 other delegates were asked by the Second Continental Congress to write a declaration putting forth the reasons the colonies should sever ties with Great Britain. The committee's members, Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, Roger Sherman, and Robert Livingston, asked Jefferson to draw up the document. At the time, Jefferson was renting 2 rooms on the second floor of Jacob Graff's house. He lived there with his enslaved servant, Bob Hemmings. He wrote the document in under 3 weeks and submitted it on June 28th. The resolution for independence was passed on July 2, 1776. After Congress debated and revised it, it was formally adopted on July 4th. Jefferson moved out of the house shortly thereafter, and the original structure was torn down in 1883. I have a question. Do kids your age, are they more interested in the history of America or in One Direction?
One Direction.
That's what I was afraid of. Now I know why you're all unemployed. What we're looking at is the site of the first White House. Before Washington, D.C., Philadelphia was the capital of the United States. It was temporary. For 10 years, a 3-story brick house on this site served as the White House. George Washington used the home from 1790 to 1797, and John Adams lived there from 1797 to 1800. 30 people lived in the President's house with Washington, including its family, secretary, and servants. He owned enslaved servants, including 9 enslaved Africans he brought to the President's house in Mount Vernon. Unlike Washington, John Adams' wife Abigail had an aversion to slavery and used only a few paid servants to run the household. This is the original foundation for the President's house, or the original White House. After Adams left in 1800 for the nation's new capital in Washington, D.C., the President's house became a hotel and then a boarding house. The Free Quaker Meeting House was built in 1783 and was a place of worship for Quakers. They're a religious group who at the time were prohibited from fighting, selling, making military supplies, taking a loyalty of oath to the new American government, holding a position in a civil office, or paying war taxes. Despite their principle of pacifism, about 200 Quakers supported the war effort, knowing they would be disowned by the group. Between 30 to 50 members regularly attended services here, including Betsy Ross, until 1834. The building has since been a school, an apprentice library, a plumbing warehouse, and a headquarters for the Junior League of Philadelphia. In 1957, the house was purchased by the state of Pennsylvania and restored to its 18th century appearance. The 2 benches in the front are original, as is the floor, as is the bricks on the outside. Here's a tourist sitting down. This is where the Free Quakers used to meet. They were the first ones to have price tags for items. And now we're going to the burial site of Benjamin Franklin, Christ Church Burial Ground. The Christ Church Burial Ground was established in 1719, when the original cemetery next to Christ Church, which was the birthplace of the U.S. Episcopal Church, became full. Dozens of colonial, revolutionary, and early Republic notables are buried here. We're inside the Christ Church Burial Ground, and pretty soon we're going to see Ben Franklin's grave. and 3 or 4 other signers of the Declaration of Independence are buried here as well. A lot of these look unmarked. And this is where Benjamin Franklin is buried. Benjamin Franklin, signer of the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution, and his wife Deborah are also buried here. After his death in 1790, a crowd of 20,000 mourners followed a procession to his grave. After the Constitution of the United States was ratified, the government recognized the need to create a single national currency to replace the various state-issued bills and coins. In 1793, Congress met in Philadelphia to pass the Coinage Act, advocated by the Secretary of the Treasury, Alexander Hamilton. The new system replaced the English currency of pounds, shillings, and pence with dollars and cents. It also authorized the creation of the U.S. Mint in Philadelphia. 4 mints were built in Philadelphia since 1792. The first mint was located 2 blocks from the current mint, which has been here since 1969. The first coins minted at the original facility were made for George Washington's household silver. It was expected that the mint would eventually move to the nation's new capital of Washington, D.C., but the government lacked the money to build a new mint. In 1828, Congress passed an act that ensured the mint would remain permanently in Philadelphia. While there are 3 other mints in operation in the U.S. today, Denver, San Francisco, and West Point, the Philadelphia facility is the largest in the world. Betsy Ross was an American seamstress who some say sewed the first American flag. When the Continental Congress voted to adopt the U.S. flag on June 14, 1777, they needed flags with the 13 stars and 13 stripes. No one at the time recorded who made the first flag, but in 1870, Betsy Ross's grandchildren began telling the story of how she was asked to sew the flag. Betsy Ross lived here from 1773 to 1785, where she ran her upholstery business, but some historians say that she actually lived next door, and that house has since been torn down. However, the Betsy Ross House does feature many original artifacts from the 18th century. She died at the age of 84 and is buried beneath the giant elm, magnolia, and sycamore trees that shade the courtyard of her home. Carpenter's Hall was the site of the First Continental Congress in 1774. Delegates from 12 of the 13 colonies gathered here for 7 weeks and after much debate signed a Declaration of Colonial Rights, which was sent to King George of England. A secret meeting between Benjamin Franklin and a French agent took place here in December 1775 under the cover of darkness. French support was vital for the Americans in their rebellion against England. Following the Revolution, the building was rented to various tenants, such as the Bank of Pennsylvania. In 1798, it was the site of the nation's first bank robbery. Isaac Davis stole over $162,000, but the money was recovered when Davis began depositing his new wealth in the same bank. Washington Square, originally designated in 1682 as Southeast Square, is a 6.4 acres open space park on one of the 5 original planned squares laid out on the city grid by William Penn surveyor Thomas Home. During the 18th century, the square was used to graze animals and for burials by the city's African American community and as a potter's field. During the Revolutionary War, the square was used as a burial ground for citizens and troops from the colonial army. After the Revolution, victims of the city's yellow fever epidemics were interred here, and the square was used for cattle markets and camp meetings. Improvement efforts began in 1815 as the neighborhoods around the square were developed and became fashionable. In 1825, the park was named Washington Square in tribute to George Washington, and a monument to Washington was proposed. This monument was never built, but served as a seed for the eventual tribute to soldiers of the Revolutionary War. In 1954, the Washington Square Planning Committee decided that instead of the original proposed monument to Washington, a monument to all soldiers and sailors of the Revolutionary War would be built. The monument, designated the Tomb of the Unknown Revolutionary War Soldier, includes a bronze-cast statue of Washington as the monument's centerpiece. The tomb includes remains which were disinterred after archaeological examination from within the park from when it was a cemetery. The remains are that of a soldier, but it's uncertain if he was colonial or British. An unknown number of bodies remain buried beneath the square and the surrounding area. Some are still occasionally found during construction and maintenance projects. One of the National Constitution Center's most popular and iconic attractions, Signers Hall, invites you to walk among the founding fathers who added their name to the Constitution, as well as those who dissented on September 17, 1787. Signers Hall brings to life the final day of the Constitutional Convention in the Assembly Room of the Pennsylvania State House, now known as Independence Hall. There are numerous famous faces in the room, including George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, and James Madison. In this room is a rare original copy of the first public printing of the Constitution, published in the Pennsylvania Packet and Daily Advertiser on September 19, 1787 by John Dunlap and David Claypool. There are only about 25 known copies of this printing in the world. The center also features one of the 12 surviving copies of the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights is displayed alongside a first edition William Stone engraving of the Declaration of Independence from 1823. I asked my niece to rate our day together on a scale of 1 to 10, and she gave it a 5. She said the reason she rated it a 5 was that I was old and boring. While I will not admit to being either, I hope that one day she watches the video and realizes that the day she spent with her uncle in historic Philadelphia wasn't so bad after all.